welcome to another episode. And today I have Abdullah Ansari, who you guys know from Grassroots Cricket. And joining me is Ali Asad from Cricket Twitter. He's a passionate Pakistan fan. We'll be doing a review of the Pakistan-India game. We didn't do it yesterday. I felt let everyone take a breather and sort of reflect. So here we are today. So I'll start with both of you. I'll ask you first, Ali Asad. What are the positives that the Pakistani cricket team can take from yesterday's performance, if any?
So I'll thank you for having me on, Sadi Bhai, and I hope you're good, Abdullah Bhai. In terms of the positives, I think the first one is the opening pair. Not necessarily how what they ended up scoring, but the fact that they survived and managed to score well in the opening power play, because there was a question mark on Imam's form heading into this, not just this World Cup, but this game specifically. But I feel like him surviving those first 10 overs and managing the few short deliveries that they gave him, even though I feel like India didn't test him as well as they could have, given his propensity to get out to the short stuff. I feel like they bowled maybe like 2 or 3 bouncers to him when they could have bowled more, but I still feel like he showed a lot of grit surviving that. And Abdullah, he looked really good. I think the shot that he played to Bumrah towards long on was probably the best shot of our innings. And just, I feel like we can take a lot of solace from the fact that our opening pair was able to set a platform. And I know it may sound strange to say that, given the fact that Abdullah scored only 20 runs and Imam scored only 36. But you could chalk it up to some bad luck and Abdullah getting a really good ball that kept low across seamer when maybe he expected a short delivery, so he was hanging on the back foot. But that opening pair and Babar Azam scoring runs, so I would say that top 3 scoring runs can give us a lot of hope for the rest of the tournament, because so far in the first 2 games, and specifically in that Sri Lanka game, yes, Abdullah scored, but it was Rizwan in the middle we were really relying on. So just knowing that we have someone we can rely on besides Rizwan in this batting lineup, that gives me a lot of comfort. And if anything, this might be a confidence boost for them, that in these, against what is probably the best bowling lineup of the whole tournament, we were able to get a start in front of a hostile, huge crowd. So the fact that we can do that here, we can do that anywhere. And we know that our middle order, our lower order is much stronger after they get a base from these top 3, because of how much we've relied on them over the last 4 years. So we were in a bit of a panic mode, because over the last 4 years, like I said, post 2019 World Cup, the bulk of our scoring was done by the top 3. So immediately before this World Cup and during it, these guys lose form and we're like, what the hell is going to happen now? We don't know what our middle order is going to do in the previous 2 games. And now our top order fired in this game. You bring those together, and that gives me a lot of assurance about this batting lineup in general, despite the huge margin of defeat. So
Plus,
that's what I would take.
They survived that cauldron the first 5 overs. Abdullah Bhai, I'll ask you a different question, and it's something that Ali brought up. Going to the opening partnership, if we look at the power play, Pakistan scored 49 for 1 off the first 10. India had 79 for 2. In today's era of whether it's T20 or ODI format, can Pakistan have 2 orthodox openers, or do you need one unorthodox opener who will basically go hard? You look at how Rohit has basically reinvented himself and really just attacks. Now it helps that he has stature in the game. He doesn't have anything to lose in that sense. But does Pakistan need to revisit going forward after this World Cup how they approach that opening pair? And then just add on to that any other positives that you took that Ali didn't mention.
For me, this question can have quite a complicated answer, but I'll try to keep it short. I think the main point to note here is that when we started with this partnership of Fakhr and Imam back in 2017, then we had been coming through that era where we had the likes of Ahmed Shehzad and Nasir Jamshed and all as openers, and that was something that we really struggled to find a stable opening pair. So after the PSL and we started to get different types of players coming through, and we had a bit more assurance with Fakhar, so we invested in him initially. And then Imam, for whatever reason, I think he mentioned Grant Flower was the one who felt that he could be a good player for the opening slot. So they decided to go with him post the Azhar Ali period, when Azhar Ali when he moved away from ODI. So I think for that time, that was a good investment because those were the players that you had. But going forward, now clearly there's more talent and more skill coming through. And I also feel that ODIs are changing a lot. So it would make sense that after the World Cup, you try to invest in players with a higher ceiling if you do have them. And if you're looking forward, the problem is that we tend to not do that. We don't look too far ahead. We don't plan for the next World Cup in advance. So even though Imam, like, he has a good record in South Africa, but realistically, what brand of ODI cricket will be played in 2027? So I think that it is something that we'll have to look into regarding our approach at the top and the resources that we have now. But coming back to this World Cup, I think that it was too early to go ahead with any of those type of options. So what we have right now is what we have to make do with. And regarding the India game, like, I think the positives are what happened until the 30th over, and after that, there's no more positives. Like, until then, we were going fine. We were playing like we always play ODIs. We were building and stabilizing the innings, especially after both the openers get out. This is the default method that Pakistan has for ODI cricket, that we build and look to set a stable base for the middle, for the rest of the middle and lower middle order. So that was fine, but it was pretty disappointing what happened after that. But I was pleased with the way we were able to overcome that. And I think that a lot of the post-match analysis has been about our supposed collapse in the face of the pressure and the atmosphere and everything. But if that was the case, that the pressure got to the team, then shouldn't that collapse have happened in the first 30 overs? Why did they survive, and why were they able to build up the innings to that period? It's not as simple as that. Like, I think it's not that analysis part is missing the skill gap.
I'll come to the collapse. I want to touch on the up to the 30th over, so up to 155 for two. And Ali, I'll ask you this. Pandya came out and with comments, and he said that Pakistan basically lost the game in his eyes because Babar and Rizwan weren't aggressive enough. They didn't put enough pressure. So at 155 for two, they were going just above 5 and over. Did they miss a trick there? Were there chances to really hit the accelerator, or do you think the atmosphere was such that, and the pressure on them was that they just wanted to be safe and play, as Abdullah Bhai said, the Pakistani way, and just build a platform and then basically go big at the end? Did they miss a trick?
At the end of the 29th, we were 150 for two. I think if you ask any Pakistan fan,
answer this without the fact that we collapsed. Were you happy at
right? Yeah. I think you ask any Pakistan fan, are you going to take 150 for two at the 29th? Anyone would say yes. And if we get a bit deeper into it, Kuldeep had bowled 6 of his overs by then. So if our issue was, and I'm not negating the fact that maybe we could have gone a bit harder against them, if the main issue was that we let Kuldeep bowl to us, that's why the collapse happened, then why is it that Kuldeep was able to bowl 6 or 7 overs with no wicket at all? I thought Babar and Rizwan actually played Kuldeep quite well, given the fact that Babar does not have a good prior record against him, and that would be weighing on his mind. And sometimes you just have to chalk it up to the opposition bowling well. His lengths were spot on there. His lengths were really, really good. If you remember, Rizwan actually initially tried to sweep him a few times and slog sweep him as well. but he missed, and there was an LB call and all of that. So then they decided, okay, what's the best thing we can do here? The best thing we can do is just milk this guy straight, which is the best way to play Kuldeep, I feel. The only thing you can say is they perhaps could have used their feet a bit more, but then you assess the risk to reward ratio. Is it worth hitting this guy over his head for a boundary or whatever, knowing the fact that that probably is not going to unsettle a bowler of his quality with his record against us? Is that worth it? I would say no. I am one of in the minority who disagree with the fact that we could have gone harder against the spinners, because I feel like the spinners bowled really well, and I feel like Babar and Rizwan almost negotiated them playing decently well with a decent run rate, with a 5+ overall run rate. I don't think the collapse, and you said ignore the collapse, but I do not think the collapse happened because of the way we approached the spinners.
I agree.
I feel like exactly. I feel like the collapse was more due to the fact that there was the wicket was keeping low against the pace bowlers, and you just had like Bumrah, all-time great fast bowler, bowl. His figures don't suggest it because he got 2 wickets, but the spell he bowled there with that accuracy, that reverse he was getting, which he mentioned in the post-game interview, that he got some reverse and he capitalized on that, and just the lengths he was bowling there, top of off. I just look. It may not sound like the most intelligent thing to say post-game when you're in a World Cup, but I think it would do us more harm than good to read too much into this specific collapse. I really, really feel that it was a bit of a freak occurrence against the best bowling lineup of the tournament, against the best side of the tournament, in front of that crowd. It's just, how much can you read into it? So I wouldn't blame Babar and Rizwan for how they played the spinners. I would blame, and blame is a harsh word here. I just feel like Babar, he got a decent delivery. He plays that shot all the time, so you could say it's bad luck. But if he could have gone on there, made 70, 80 odd on that wicket, where it's not easy for a new batsman to start, I feel like that could have been the key for us, and not just Babar, but Imam as well. The way he got out fishing outside off stump, very, very soft. Rizwan got an amazing delivery. You can't really say anything about that. But I was very happy by Kuldeep's 7th over, and by Jadeja's, I think it was his 7th over. I was very happy with how we negotiated the spinners, given how they were bowling. Because every single over, I was like, these guys look really threatening. I really don't want these guys to lose a wicket against them, and I was really satisfied with how they played them.
No,
and I know I'm in the minority.
You make a fair point that we shouldn't look too deep into it. The one thing I would say about the collapse is that clearly the occasion affected South Shakil. You could see that. I think out of all then of course, then you lose a collective head. Abdullah bhai, anything else to really apart to take from that collapse, or is it more of a case of, Adia said, that these things happen, these things tend to happen to Pakistan a little bit more frequently than other teams, but we should just move on and sort of turn the page on this?
Yeah, just about the partnership, I was also thinking about it quite a lot last night, because initially I didn't think that there was much to it, but after the match when Pandya had that interview,
correct.
And then
this conversation stems from that
it stems from that, and then of course journalists picked it up very quickly. Like there's a certain section of them that really want to pile on Babar and Rizwan anyway, and they take any opportunity they get. So I started thinking about it, and honestly, to me it looked just like a standard Pakistan ODI innings till then. And I discussed this with Rayan earlier as well, and he also said the same thing, that it was a standard Pakistan innings. Like what happened after the Pacers went on and the spin duo came into the attack was that Rizwan tried to take a bit of the lead after he had also a slow start, but then he began to take on the spinners a little bit. Like he tried sweeping Kuldeep, I think, and I think it was Kuldeep, right? Or was it Jadeja when he got out LBW, but that he reviewed it successfully. And he tried a few things, but they didn't come off simply because of the quality of bowling. Like Rizwan in recent years has been a very good He's been a very good a batsman who counter punches really well against left arm orthodox spin. But with Jadeja, it's so difficult to do that because of the line and length and trajectory that he bowls at. He can't, like, you didn't see Rizwan ever try to play the inside out cover drive shot he plays over extra cover against, because Jadeja just doesn't give you that opportunity. So generally, I think that they played well. I just wish that Babar, I mean, that's how he plays, and but there was a period when I think he had made 7 runs of 20 something balls in the middle. I just wish that he would look to be a bit more creative in terms of getting off strike, at least, even when he isn't able to step up the pace, so that the scoreboard would keep moving. But besides that, I don't think that there was much of a problem. And considering the bowling lineup, especially that they're facing, I think that the innings was building up really fine. And with the collapse, I agree with Ariyasab that it's really harsh to take away much from that. Like you said, South was probably a bit overawed by the occasion, and I think this goes back to the point that so far he's played, I think this was his 8th or 9th ODI maybe, and he's mostly played test matches besides that in front of not great crowds. There aren't great crowds for test matches, so it's obviously a big occasion for him. He would have never played in front of anything close to this magnitude. So that's understandable. And then the rest of the collapse was down to some unfortunate dismissals like Iftikhar's, and then just pure quality like Rizwan and Shadab. So really not too much to take away from it.
Right, those two deliveries, especially the Rizwan one, was amazing. No, while doing research before I had you guys on, I actually watched that first 155 runs on double X speed, and I thought it was, like you said, a standard, orthodox chase. And in fact, the score predictor had them in the 320s, 330 range at one stage, which is what we would have all taken. So let's come to the bowling. I don't want to. It's a little unfair because when you have such a low target, the batting team, especially when you have a team with such talent and breadth of talent like India, they can literally win it any way they want. But I'll come to a couple of things. One, Shadab Khan, he struggled again, and I think it's reasonable to point this out, even in the context of let's not put too much on the bowling. Because he had a couple overs where he was tight, but then it all sort of, fell apart. Is it too soon to consider his place, but is it not too soon to consider his role? In the sense that if they don't want to consider his place, should they consider switching him from a 10-over bowler to a 5-over bowler? Let's have that discussion. Aliyasad, if you want to go first.
So Shadab, I don't think it would be too harsh to say that Shadab has not been bowling well at all in ODI cricket since the Asia Cup and this World Cup as well. And I get the point that when the target is so low, the batting team approaches it differently and the bowling team approaches it differently. So you're bound to leak more runs and all of that. But just visually, the way he has been bowling and the way he bowled in this game, a lot of half volleys without any threat, tossed up, no delivery on a threatening length at all. So the question that you ask about not considering his place in the team, but considering his role, I think that is the only solution now, because Shadab is the vice captain and he's been a key player for us in white ball cricket for so long, and he's a tournament performer and all of that. He provides value with the bat. But I think it's high time that instead of our 4th bowler, which is what he is right now, he's our 4th bowler, Nawaz is our 5th, Iftikhar is our 6th. I think it's time to bring in a 4th specialist bowler in place of Nawaz, who is more disposable than Shadab as a player, and use Shadab as more of a defensive option, 5 or 6 overs, which he is good at, which he has proven he is good at in these World T20s as well, and bring in and bowl his quota alongside Iftikhar, who has pleasantly surprised everyone with the ball. I do not agree with people saying that we need to drop Nawaz and bowl 10 overs of Iftikhar, because what they are not taking into consideration is that when you have a sixth bowler as a part-timer as opposed to a fifth, the opposition team approaches that very, very differently. If the opposition team knows that they have 10 overs of Iftikhar no matter what, they are going to play those overs with a lot of brutality and take a lot of runs from his overs and plan for those overs and play them very, very intelligently. I still have faith in Shadab's accuracy. I could be wrong, but from what I've seen, the way he has been bowling in one-day cricket is a result of the burden, and this is not to take anything away from him or absolve him of blame or anything like that, but a lot of it has to do with the burden of being the fourth bowler and the sole leg spinner of the team, whose job it is to get wickets. Now, he could easily dart it outside the off stump and not get hit for as many runs as he is now. But he knows that in the larger context of things, that would actually be costly for the team, that actually requires wickets in the middle overs. So, would it not be easier now, instead of hammering our head against the wall and telling him, you have to get wickets, you have to get wickets? It does not seem realistic for me for us to now expect that. And I think it's time that we use him as more of a defensive option, which he is better at, and get someone who could potentially be a better wicket taker for those middle overs.
Abdullah, your thoughts?
Yeah, I think I agree with most of that. I think that just to add more context to that discussion, we should just consider how the other teams are structured, because at the end of the day, it's all about the balance and how you can structure your team. This isn't the IPL where you have impact subs and you can just play however many batsmen or bowlers that you want. You have to figure out how to balance your team with an effective batting and bowling lineup. And I feel that the two other options that come into the picture where people want to drop Shadab, one is that you play Agha and you rely on 10 overs off spin. I feel that weakens the bowling too much, and I feel that if you stick with Nawaz at 7 and play and replace Shadab with another bowler, I feel that weakens the batting too much. So for me, the best case scenario is what Adi Asad mentioned, that you don't rely on Shadab as one of the frontline bowlers, but you keep him as your fifth bowler. You use him in phases where you know that you can get a few overs out of the way, rather than being in those phases where you're desperate for wickets, which is how all teams in the World Cup are structured, besides India, because India have that cushion of Pandya bowling really well these days. So Thakur's bowling it's almost not even that essential for them. They can afford to have 50 mostly quality overs in there, but they're the only team doing that. Like for England, we see Sam Curran as the fifth bowler. He's gone an 8 and over so far in their 3 games. He's really struggled. I think his figure is something like 17 overs in 3 games, 2 for 140. So he's bowling roughly 6 overs a game for them, and he hasn't delivered with the bat either. And all teams are struggling a little bit with this in terms of the balance. Like South Africa have gone for a decently strong bowling by keeping Jansen, but they know that if they lose 5 wickets, if they're 170 for 5, for example, they're going to be in trouble. But they're relying on their strong top 6 to counter that. So for every team, it's a matter of how the team is constructed and how you can balance it most effectively. And I feel that with Shadab, you still can get utility if you rely on him as your fifth bowler. And some days, if he's bowling well as the fifth bowler, he can bowl his full quota. Some days where he's not bowling so well and you have a left-hander in front, and you can afford to bowl Iftikhar for maybe 5 overs, he might need to just bowl 5 overs. So I think that until he shows signs of being until he shows that he's getting into better rhythm and he's able to execute his skills better, I think it's time to give him a little bit less responsibility with the ball if they want to move on from Nawaz, which I think that they will probably do in the next game, considering that it's in Bangalore.
So then both of you are in agreement then for the Australia game, you expect the one change to be made is Nawaz for Usama Mir.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I think that'll be it. Yeah. But I honestly wouldn't be surprised if they do something else. Like if they were to go down the Agha as the fifth, Agha and Iftikhar as the fifth bowler route, I wouldn't be surprised. But I just hope that's not the case.
That's a scary proposition at that ground.
Last thoughts as we close the chapter on India and look forward to Australia and the rest of the World Cup? I'll start with you, Ali.
My last thoughts are that today's game between Afghanistan and England was very, very important for us. And I feel like things are starting to clear up more and more as to who we are in direct competition with for that fourth spot. Because let's be honest, we are competing for that fourth spot right now. So it's Australia and England as of now. Things can change. England or Australia can go on a crazy win streak, and New Zealand can have a 180 and start playing terribly and start losing. But as of now, it is them. And that, for me, raises the importance of that Bangalore game. Because should Australia beat Sri Lanka, I think that's tomorrow, that Bangalore game will have a heavy impact on the fate of both of these teams going forward into that tournament. So right now, I don't want to put one game on a pedestal because we can still qualify if we lose in Bangalore. But right now, I think we need to take advantage of these very apparent holes in this Australian side, like Zampa not bowling as well, their batsmen maybe being a bit iffy against spin bowling, which once again emphasizes the need for Osama Mir, who was our best bowler in the warm-up games, and he was on a hot streak in T20s as well, which there you can mix it a bit coming into this World Cup. So the toss in that ground, bowling first in that ground is a big advantage given its size, given the nature of the wicket. But I think that we can set the India game behind us and we can really capitalize on, like I said, some of these weaknesses on this Aussie side, even though you like theoretically these conditions suit their explosive batters, but you never know. Our batsmen, they look in good form despite that collapse. Our bowlers, we know that they have good defensive skills, especially Rauf. Shaheen has improved his defensive skills. Hassan Ali is looking like our best pacer in this tournament. I think we all thought that against India with that low target, he would get absolutely demolished, but he proved once more that he can keep it tight against quality batsmen. And that small thing gives me a lot of hope for the Australia game. So yes, I would bring in Fakhr for Imam for that game, but that's not going to happen, so it's not worth discussing. But that one change in strengthening the bowling lineup, bringing in Osama Mir for Nawaz, I think that's very, very important. That's extremely important given the fact that Osama is someone who's more of a conventional leg spinner with a lot of height who can generate bounce. He can sort of take the flatness of the wicket, which will be flat given it's, I think, the first game at Bangalore. I think he can take that a little bit out of the equation and use his height to generate some extra bounce against batsmen who are susceptible to leg spin. So yes, I think we win that Australia game. We can be very, very confident about making semis, but that game is very important. And in some ways, in many ways, you set the emotional aspect aside. It is more important than the India game we just played, given that India are a better side than Australia right now, especially at home. So yes, that game, I'm going to be more nervous for that than India.
No, that's a good point, and especially if Australia loses to Sri Lanka, then Australia sort of become the corner tigers heading into that game because they basically have to run the table to then make it. Go ahead, Abdullah. Last final thoughts.
Yeah, I think again the important thing is to not take too much away from the India game because I just feel that the quality differential in between both teams it's just quite big at this point. And if we really want to win the World Cup, we're going to have to dream of overcoming that somehow. But yesterday wasn't that day, and we can have that discussion if we get to the final, as Mickey is already dreaming of. He said yesterday we'll face them again in Ahmedabad, which I am frankly not looking forward to if it happens. But yeah, just get that India game out of the system. I think that's what the players would also be thinking, and the team, because they know that it's a long tournament, so you have to take it game by game. And yeah, I hope that they put up a strong showing in Bangalore. I think Australia do have some weak spots, as Adias had pointed out. So yeah, I just hope that we put up a good show then, and inshallah win there and have a good tournament ahead.
No, I had one other question to ask you guys, but I'll just touch on that gap thing. It's interesting. A couple of years ago, when Rohit was sort of struggling and Kohli had lost his form a little bit, and Shaheen was praying for him, we felt the gap was narrower because we had great equalizers in Shaheen, and Naseem, and that gap now seems to have widened again. Shubman Gill hadn't sort of come on the scene yet. Can you guys just quickly touch on the crowd yesterday?
Regarding the crowd, I think that a lot of not having support was obvious. Like, we could talk about, like, obviously that should not be the case in an international game, and visas should be issued to fans of all countries, and we could get into that. But I thought, once again, I opened with the fact that we handled the crowd really, really well at the start, I thought. But some of the chants coming out, the videos later, I don't know if you want to get into that, but those I feel were not acceptable at all, and those really disheartened me. The rest of the cheering for India, going silent when we score, like, none of that matters. At the end of the day, that's like sport related, so it comes with the territory, right? So in fact, I would say that Abdullah hitting that Bumrah shot over long on and the crowd going absolutely quiet, that would probably do a lot of good for the batter's confidence. Like, I managed to silence the crowd, ironically, instead of the crowd erupting when you hit the shot. So yeah, like it was probably one of the biggest crowds ever in a cricket game, and like it was in the broadcast you couldn't hear it as loud for some reason, but I saw some videos at the ground, and it just looked like a completely different world.
Distasteful, because sports is supposed to bring people together. Dilab, any last word?
Absolutely.
Yeah, my thoughts are that um, I don't really know how much to get into this, but honestly, like, some Indians are a bit delusional in terms of how they've responded to this. Like, a lot of people are willing to overlook what is actually happening with Pakistan fans not being allowed to attend games. Journalists just, I think they got their visas just before this game. And for some reason, Zaka Ashraf is there, which I think we'd also rather not have. So all the negatives that came together for this game. So uh, it's not about the crowd and how partisan it was. Fine, that happens. It's sports. It's essentially an away match. If India were playing an away game in Pakistan, the same thing would happen, that they would be heavy Pakistan support. But I don't think we would have banned, effectively banned fans of the other team from attending. So that's an important factor to keep in mind. And regarding the chants, I mean, considering as someone who has an Indian background and all that, I'm aware of what goes on in India, and I know what the political climate is, and I wasn't too surprised by it. I was hoping that the level of some of the chants, I was hoping it wouldn't get that far, but considering that India's own players like Mohammad Shami have faced it before, I wasn't surprised. And of course, we see people clutching at straws in the aftermath, saying it was because Rizwan, because he prayed in front of the crowd 2 years ago. I'm surprised they even remember that, but clearly that's the only thing they'd want to remember from that game in October 2021. But that's all just clutching at straws. Like, Shami never did anything to deserve the same chance, but it was because of his faith. So clearly, a lot of people do have a problem with that, and that's fine. But I do hope that if Pakistan do make the final, and that's a very big if, but inshallah, I do hope to see it happen. It would be interesting to see what happens then. And I do wish that the ICC had. I mean, it's a pointless conversation to have because the ICC is powerless anyway. But there should be some kind of standards, at least for ICC tournaments, that are upheld for these type of occasions and situations.
No, all very valid points. And we are making the final. Yes, it has a whole scenario, including what happens in the final. So thank you, gentlemen, very much. I thoroughly enjoyed it, and we look forward
Thank
to
you.
week coming up tomorrow.